She makes every day great and awesome and better, and I know myself more because of her.
Tom Cruise's daughter, Suri, has finally broken her silence in a way that no one expected. For years, the world has been fascinated by her life, often wondering how she's coping with being the daughter of one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Now, Suri has taken the step of publicly opening up, and her words are nothing short of surprising. In an exclusive interview, she opens up about her personal struggles, her relationship with her father, and what life has really been like for her behind closed doors. Her revelation is shaking the foundations of everything we thought we knew about the Cruise family. What exactly did she say? The world expected her to speak about her growing years under the intense media spotlight, but what she shared goes much deeper than that. Suri's life story is one of resilience, hardship, and breaking free from the shadows of fame. For years, she's been silent, and the reasons for that have only now come to light. It's clear that Suri has faced challenges that many would never expect from a child of such fame and wealth. This interview marks a major turning point in her journey, as she opens up in a way that is candid and unapologetic. What made her speak now, and what does it mean for her future? Imagine growing up as the child of one of the most famous celebrities in the world. Paparazzi follow your every move, the media reports on your smallest actions, and your life is constantly dissected for the world to see. This was Suri Cruise's reality. From the moment she was born, the world watched her, waiting for every detail of her life. Her mother, Katie Holmes, and her father, Tom Cruise, were an unstoppable Hollywood power couple, and Suri was the center of it all. But while her parents' fame grew, the pressures on Suri became increasingly intense. Suri's childhood was not as glamorous as it seemed. Although she had access to luxuries many people could only dream of, the price of fame came at a heavy cost. Growing up under constant scrutiny, Suri shares in the interview that the emotional toll was often too much to bear. She describes feeling like a prisoner in her own life, unable to escape the constant attention. The concept of privacy was foreign to her, and she felt suffocated by the world watching her every move. This chapter of her life, filled with moments of intense loneliness, speaks volumes about the challenges children of celebrities often face. How did she cope with all the pressure? And how did it shape who she is today? Behind the mask. For many years, the world has speculated about the relationship between Suri and her famous father, Tom Cruise. While Tom has made no secret of his love for his children, Suri's silence on the matter spoke volumes. But in this interview, Suri provides an eye-opening look into her relationship with her father. Suri speaks about the emotional distance she felt growing up, despite being surrounded by wealth and luxury. She reveals the complexities of her relationship with Tom Cruise, one that was often strained due to his demanding career and commitments. From an early age, Suri was aware of her father's fame, but it wasn't until later that she truly understood the emotional toll it took on their relationship. In the interview, she candidly shares her feelings of abandonment, especially during times when Tom was away filming or attending to his own business. Despite her father's love for her, Suri explains how the lack of emotional presence left her feeling disconnected. She also opens up about the profound impact her parents' divorce had on her relationship with Tom. How did this emotional disconnect shape Suri's view of her father? And what does she think of their relationship now? Suri Cruise's bold move. As Tom Cruise's daughter, Suri was expected to follow in the footsteps of her famous parents. However, instead of chasing Hollywood fame, she took an entirely different approach. Suri stepped out of the spotlight, seeking to build her own identity away from the media frenzy. She chose to live a private life, far from the cameras and headlines that followed her every move as a child. In this new chapter, she talks about her decision to escape Hollywood's grip and the sense of freedom she found by distancing herself from her famous family. The media attention had always been overwhelming, and Suri made the bold decision to seek a life of normalcy, far from the prying eyes of the world. But the transition was not easy. She had to deal with her own battles, including the overwhelming pressure to live up to the image the world had built for her. In the interview, Suri reflects on the mental and emotional challenges she faced during her decision to step away from the limelight. The process was filled with uncertainty, but it was also one of the most liberating choices she ever made. How did she navigate life away from fame? And what lessons did she learn along the way? Despite the wealth and luxury Suri was afforded, her life was far from picture perfect. While the world assumed she was living a dream life, Suri reveals the pressure she faced to constantly maintain a perfect image. As a child, she felt the weight of her family's expectations and the public's scrutiny. There were moments of intense self-doubt, anxiety, and even sadness. Suri recalls feeling like she was living a double life, one where she had to play the role of the happy, perfect daughter in public, while struggling internally with loneliness and a sense of not fitting in. She reveals how difficult it was to separate her personal identity from the celebrity world she was born into. Her childhood, which was supposed to be carefree, was instead filled with complex emotions. What caused these feelings? And how did they affect her growth into adulthood? For years, Suri stayed silent in the face of the public's overwhelming curiosity. She rarely made appearances and avoided interviews, leading to speculation about her life. But now, she's ready to tell her story. In this interview, she explains why she chose to remain silent for so long. Suri reveals that, for much of her life, she felt like she had to protect herself and her family from the media's constant attention. She feared that speaking out would only fuel the rumors and make her a target. Suri also shares how difficult it was to find her own voice while growing up in such an intense environment. She was often told what to say, how to behave, and how to act in public. This left her feeling like she couldn't be her true self. In breaking her silence, Suri is not only telling her story but also reclaiming her narrative. How did this silence affect her, and what was the turning point that made her finally decide to speak out? The struggles of being Tom Cruise's daughter. Being Tom Cruise's daughter came with heavy expectations. From the public to the industry, everyone had an idea of who Suri should be. In this chapter, Suri reflects on the pressure to meet these expectations and how it shaped her identity. As a child of one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, Suri was constantly compared to her father and others in her family. People expected her to follow in her father's footsteps, whether in acting or in maintaining a certain public image. But Suri was determined to break free from these constraints and define herself. Suri talks about how she struggled to reconcile her personal ambitions with the expectations placed on her. There were times when she felt trapped by the fame and attention that surrounded her. The need to constantly prove herself became exhausting. However, despite these struggles, Suri ultimately found strength in her individuality. She made the conscious choice to stay true to herself, rejecting the idea that she needed to live up to the image others had of her. Opening up about her life. In her recent interview, Suri opens up about the emotional challenges she's faced throughout her life. She shares her deepest feelings, admitting that her journey has not been easy. Growing up in the shadow of her famous parents, Suri often felt like an outsider. She talks about her inner conflict, the moments of self-doubt, and the fear of being judged for simply being herself. Her confession is a powerful and honest look into the realities of growing up in a family like hers. Suri's candidness in the interview reflects a maturity and self-awareness that has developed over the years. While many expected her to fall into the same patterns as other celebrity children, Suri has managed to carve out her own identity. Suri's journey from the child of a megastar to an independent woman is one of resilience, and her story continues to inspire those who face their own battles. Suri's life has been under constant scrutiny since the moment she was born. The media has relentlessly followed her every move, and her childhood was filled with headlines, rumors, and speculation. In this chapter, Suri shares how she coped with the intense media pressure and what it was like to grow up in the spotlight. From a young age, she was aware of the cameras constantly following her and the gossip that surrounded her family. Suri talks about how the constant attention affected her mental health and how she tried to navigate life while being pulled in different directions. Despite the wealth and luxury, Suri shares that fame came at the expense of her peace of mind. She had to learn how to shield herself from the negative attention and find ways to protect her emotional well-being. Breaking free. In the interview, Suri talks about the process of breaking free from the constraints of her famous family and carving out her own life. After years of living in the public eye, she made the conscious decision to step away from the spotlight. She shares that her journey toward independence wasn't easy, but it was necessary for her growth. She talks about the importance of learning to stand on her own 2 feet and make decisions that were best for her. Suri's decision to step away from the Hollywood scene was an act of rebellion, but also an act of self-love. She explains how she felt suffocated by the constant expectations and felt the need to find a life that was authentic to her. The role of Scientology. One of the most enigmatic aspects of Suri's life has been her connection to the Church of Scientology. While Tom Cruise is one of the most vocal advocates of Scientology in the world, much of the focus around Suri has been on her relationship with the church, both during and after her parents' marriage. Despite the fact that Katie Holmes made an effort to distance herself from Scientology after the divorce, its influence still lingered heavily over Suri's early years. Tom Cruise's deep involvement in Scientology has been a defining characteristic of his public life, and his role within the church has made him a central figure in its teachings and practices. But how did this affect Suri? As a young child, Suri had spent time with her father at various Scientology events, where she was exposed to a philosophy that is often shrouded in mystery and controversy. From an early age, she was raised in an environment where Scientology was not just a belief system, but a way of life. However, after Katie Holmes made the decision to file for divorce, she made it clear that she wanted to raise Suri outside of the church. This led to a dramatic shift in Suri's life, as she was no longer attending Scientology-related events, nor was she being groomed to follow in the footsteps of her father's faith. Scientology's grip on Suri's upbringing began to loosen, but the shadow of this religion's influence still haunted her. Katie Holmes, in her determination to protect her daughter, fought to raise Suri with her own values, but the church continued to have a silent yet potent presence in Suri's life. Suri Cruise's teenage years. As Suri Cruise enters her teenage years, she begins to assert her independence in ways that are both striking and alarming. For someone who had grown up in the media spotlight, the transition into her teen years is marked by an increasing desire for privacy and freedom from the watchful eyes of paparazzi and the public. At 14, Suri started to push back against the life that had been shaped for her. She stopped attending public events and seemed to deliberately distance herself from her famous parents. This rebellion wasn't about making headlines or seeking attention, but rather about reclaiming control over her life. Suri was no longer the smiling toddler posing for photographs with her famous parents. She was a teenager who wanted to be seen for who she was, not as the offspring of 2 megastars. But what exactly was Suri rebelling against? Was it the constant media intrusion? The overwhelming expectations placed on her because of her parents' fame? Or was it the pressure of living in the shadow of Tom Cruise, the most famous Scientologist in the world? Whatever the reasons, Suri's decision to step away from public life was a sign that she was ready to carve out her own identity. Suri Cruise and her public image. Living as the child of Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes has come with its own set of challenges, but perhaps one of the most difficult aspects for Suri has been the constant media scrutiny. From a very young age, she became the subject of both fascination and criticism, with the media dissecting every little detail about her appearance, her behavior, and her family dynamics. At times, Suri's life has been portrayed as a fairy tale, with her mother and father constantly in the spotlight. But behind the glitz and glamour, the media's portrayal of Suri often failed to capture the complexities of her life. From being a cute toddler photographed wearing designer clothes to becoming a teenager struggling to find her own voice, Suri's public image has often been manipulated by the press to suit their narrative. At times, the public perception of Suri felt more like an invasion than an opportunity for growth. Journalists and photographers would descend upon her private moments, snapping photos and reporting on every detail. For Suri, this constant media exposure became a heavy burden. She wanted to live life without the world watching, yet her every move was recorded for the masses. How did Suri navigate the world of fame, while also trying to maintain her sense of self? And how has she managed to survive the constant pressure to conform to the expectations of a public that felt entitled to every detail of her life? Katie Holmes' role in shaping Suri's future. Katie Holmes has been an instrumental figure in shaping Suri's life, particularly after her divorce from Tom Cruise. Having experienced her own fame and struggles within the spotlight, Katie sought to create a life for Suri that was as private and normal as possible under the circumstances. In many ways, Katie has been Suri's protector, fiercely, guarding her daughter's privacy and striving to keep her grounded in a world that is anything but. Katie's determination to shield Suri from the pressures of being in the public eye became evident after her divorce from Tom. It was clear that she wanted her daughter to experience a sense of normalcy despite the extraordinary circumstances of her birth. Katie's decision to raise Suri away from the Church of Scientology and her efforts to live outside of Hollywood were key steps in protecting Suri's well-being. Katie's challenges in balancing her own career, her public image, and her responsibilities as a mother were significant. But it was her deep commitment to her daughter's happiness and sense of identity that allowed Suri to navigate a tumultuous childhood. The separation from Tom Cruise. One of the most defining moments in Suri Cruise's life was the divorce of her parents in 2012. While many people speculated about the reasons behind the separation, one thing was certain: Suri's world was forever altered. From being the daughter of one of Hollywood's biggest stars to living a quieter life with her mother in New York, the shift was drastic. The divorce also meant that Suri was no longer being raised in the Church of Scientology. Tom's deep involvement with the controversial religion had cast a shadow over their family life. And with Katie's decision to break away, Suri was given the opportunity to develop outside of the constraints of the church. But the emotional toll of the separation took its own form. In many ways, Suri became a pawn in the media frenzy that followed her parents' split. Suri's relationship with her father, once so public and affectionate, became more distant. How did this affect her emotional well-being? Did she struggle to understand why her parents separated? Or was she able to process the events with the support of her mother? Complexities and Tensions. Tom Cruise's relationship with his daughter, Suri, has long been a subject of public fascination. As a global superstar, Cruise's life has been filled with ups and downs, but one of the most enduring stories in his personal life is his connection with Suri. Throughout their early years together, Tom and Suri seemed inseparable, often spotted on father-daughter outings, appearing to have a strong bond. But after Tom's divorce from Katie Holmes, things began to shift dramatically. Reports indicate that after the divorce, Tom's relationship with Suri became distant, especially following Katie's decision to break away from Scientology. It's been widely speculated that Tom's involvement in the Church of Scientology has played a role in the strain between him and Suri. Scientology, particularly its influence on family dynamics, has caused rifts in many relationships, and Suri's relationship with her father was no exception. Katie's decision to remove Suri from the church, along with her attempts to protect Suri from being too heavily involved in the religious community, created tension between father and daughter. Did the pressure of Scientology and Tom's busy career interfere with his ability to remain a steady presence in Suri's life? And, more importantly, how did Suri handle the emotional challenges of growing up in such a complex family dynamic? Has Tom's relationship with Scientology remained a key part of his identity? What kind of father-daughter relationship was able to emerge from all of this? And what role did Suri's emotional development play in these dynamics? Suris Future. As Suri Cruise moves into adulthood, the world is still watching to see how she will navigate life as Tom Cruise's daughter. However, with the separation from Scientology, the media frenzy surrounding her childhood, and her desire for privacy, Suri's journey ahead looks markedly different from the path her father has taken. She has grown into a young woman who, despite her famous last name, appears to value privacy and autonomy above all else. But what will Suri's future look like in the years to come? Will she embrace the spotlight and follow in the footsteps of her parents? Or will she continue to remain out of the public eye, carving a life for herself far from the pressures of fame? Suri has already begun to distance herself from her father's influence, preferring to live her life on her own terms. There's also the question of whether or not Suri will ever publicly address her past. With so much of her life having been under the media microscope, Will she choose to share her side of the story in the future? Or will she continue to keep her thoughts to herself? As Suri grows into adulthood, she faces a future that is both exciting and uncertain. Her ability to navigate the world without the overwhelming influence of the media and the Church of Scientology will define her path. While we've seen glimpses of her desire for privacy, there's no doubt that Suri Cruz has the power to shape her own narrative. Whether it's through her own personal achievements, or perhaps one day offering her perspective on her childhood, we will be watching her closely. The journey from being the child of two global icons to a young woman with her own ambitions is sure to captivate the world. We'll be watching as Suri charts her own course, and in the meantime, we want to hear from you. What do you think the future holds for Suri? Will she remain in the background, or is there a chance she'll step back into the limelight? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more updates.